My substantive position is National Coordinator for the SDGs. I have with me here Herod, who will be leading us through the presentation. But just before we go through the presentation, allow me to give a very brief background to the event we are having today. So the Sustainable Development Goals Philanthropy Platform basically ran an innovation challenge. This innovation challenge was preceded by a systems innovation workshop. And basically the workshop was meant to try and identify some of the systemic issues that were basically affecting the well-being of children. And in that regard, the workshop that brought together about 40 stakeholders identified 4 key areas. One of the areas was addressing teenage pregnancies and child marriages. The other areas were community-based service delivery. The other one was tracking tracking service delivery at community level. And then we, on the basis of the areas that were identified, we launched this innovation challenge. And Norwegian Church Aid was one of the applicants. So we received over 130 applicants that responded to the challenge. And Norwegian Church Aid, as one of the respondents, actually won the innovation. So in the last 3-4 months, they've been working on this innovation called Changing Communities One Family at a Time. And Herod here, who's actually the director for the joint program, he will be introducing himself briefly. Basically, will be running us through the whole innovation, how it's been implemented, and some of the things that have come out of there. So, Herod, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mavin. As Mavin said, my name is Harold Sommer. I'm the country director for a joint country program in Zambia run by Norwegian Church Aid, Christian Aid, and Dan Church Aid. We were very lucky to be picked as one of the innovators. And we implemented this program over a 6-month period together with our partner, Favesa, who's the female African
Forum for African Women Educationalists of Zambia.
Yeah, that's right. The objective of this project is to limit the amount of child marriages and teenage pregnancies that present huge threat and challenge to especially girls finishing their education. In Zambia, they have to go through grade 12 and pass the exams in order to have in any way some kind of formal education that will present them with further opportunities in life. We implemented this pilot project in the southern province of Zambia, in a district called Kalumu. And in this area, we met a girl. Now I'll try to run the presentation at the same time. We met a girl called Universe Sikabundu. She's 16 years old, and when we spoke to her, she told us, "I felt pregnant while in grade 7 and dropped out of school because I was discouraged and afraid that people would laugh at me." Universe is a very typical Zambian girl. You can see she's now 16 and she's already had a daughter and she's dropped out of school. But for the larger Zambia, let me present some numbers. More than 15,000 Zambian schoolgirls get pregnant every year. And in fact, less than half of these girls re-enter school after delivering. 28.5% of all girls become pregnant before the age of 18. 42% of girls get married before the age of 18. And 44% of girls are likely to drop out of school before finishing 12th grade. As I said, we did this in Kalumu in the southern province of Zambia. which also ranks second highest in teen pregnancies for all the 10 provinces of Zambia. So this issue of teenage pregnancies and child marriages poses a great threat to the rights of girls in particular. Now, of course, most of you will know these, but you have issues of poverty, of teenage pregnancies, of child marriages, school dropouts, negative masculinity, the issue of HIV and AIDS, and of course, in many places, the low social status for women and girls. Now, all of these, and we're not trying to establish some kind of causality between, or causality between these, but they pose what we in this project, or they contribute to what we in this project call the dominant social norms and practices. And we found that these are actually some of those that really influence a young girl's choices. Now we see that these dominant social norms and practices that we're targeting with this project, they are again negatively impacting on the SDG goal number 1 of no poverty, SDG goal number 4 of quality education, and SDG goal number 5 on gender equality. So, how do we went about this? We know there are several projects, and my own organizations included runs some of those, that are trying to prevent girls from dropping out of school. Most of these projects, they're targeting the school and thinking that there might be issues either within the school system or the school facilities. Of course, we know that adequate water and sanitation facilities at school is definitely one key factor that prevents a lot of girls from keep going to school when they reach puberty. But we said, okay, for this project, let's not try to focus as much and only on the school, but let's have a look at the family and the wider community, which is actually where the primary context for norm formation amongst young people. So this project is targeting all of these. Well, if the family is in focus, of course, the project is titled Changing Communities One Family at a Time. But we're also looking at the school management. We're looking at the teen girls themselves, including faith leaders, district education boards, traditional leaders, civic leaders. And on top of these, and this is the only thing that the project is adding itself, is what we call the community action groups. We are trying to use existing spaces for engagement and not create as many separate setups, but using where people meet and engage in these villages. We're using the methodology of sensitization, awareness raising, advocacy, and capacity building. And we try to use as much participatory methods to create ownership among the communities themselves. We're not imposing a lot of coordinators and so on from the outside. Our partner OVCs, they work with many of the teachers or the female teachers in these schools, so they are already present. And we try to establish the only thing that's kind of set up here is the community action groups that are running the project, and they are mobilized among the community themselves as volunteers for this project. And what we do is that we provide linkages between the government, the Ministry of General Education and the district educational boards, the school management, health institutions, faith-based organizations, community leaders, and the family. So over the course of 6 months, and of course it took us a couple of months to get this started, so already we will say within 3-4 months, we were able to train 50 members of these community action groups to have the knowledge and skills increased in psychosocial counseling, tracking dropout girls, and affirmative strategies and relevant laws. Normally, in a lot of countries, you will find that the laws are actually what is inadequate. In Zambia, it's a bit different because we have a lot of adequate, well, a lot of people will still say there are gaps and loopholes and so on, but the laws itself is not the major problem. It is the application of the laws, and it's the law enforcement that is the main challenge. We were able to sensitize 131 households by these community action groups using door-to-door approach. We were able to record a mindset change among community members on the importance of education. And families became supporters of children's education, especially girls. And we were able to add the economic empowerment component, because of course that is, in many instances, families struggle to pay for their children's education, and towards the end, because the school fees increase proportionately towards the end of your formal education. We had 14 traditional or community or religious leaders who were engaged and sensitized to a level where they've actually taken action on the issue. And community leaders are supportive of this community, which is a key component for us to gain access to many of these villages. In all the 5 schools that we targeted with this project, we've seen establishment of what is called safe clubs. And the funny thing with these safe clubs is these were not a part of the methodology of the project from the beginning, but they were established by the girls and young people themselves as a way to encourage the girls who came back to school after having dropped out, maybe with a small baby or with a lot of taboos and fear of what other people, how they will look at them. But these safe clubs were created as a safe place for them to come back and give each other counseling. And this became to be known as the innovation within the innovation, because it was something that the communities, they responded with themselves and ran all by themselves. And finally, over the time of 3 to 4 months, we were able to re-enter 35 dropouts, of which 31 were girls and 4 were boys. So, of course, I mean, we've only run this program for 3 to 4 months. So the numbers here are not the most important. Of course, 35 individuals going back to school, maybe being able to finalize their formal education in grade 12 is a great achievement. But the key here is mostly that we have been able to record results in all these arenas, within the families, within the communities, with the traditional and religious leaders, in the households, and so on. And that is the key and the core of this project, is basically that we are targeting these norm formation areas for young girls and boys. So what kind of added value was needed to drive this forward, both by FAVESA and the Norwegian Church Aid? Of course, FAVESA is providing presence, they're providing institutional knowledge, both of the school system, but also of the government institutions that run these schools. And they have a legitimacy, both in the communities and within the educational system, which is key to be able to move in and start a project that works on mindset change. And of course, they have a strong recognition and cooperation with government at all levels, which is very helpful. Norwegian Church Aid, what do we provide? Well, we provide another kind of language and theological reflections around girls' rights, around norm formation, and how the community should look at young girls who grows up. We provide a legitimacy among traditional and faith leaders. And we do have some organizational capacity to monitor and run and facilitate a program like this. So, at the end of this period, we've been looking at what other opportunities do we have. Of course, we want to continue and strengthen this project in Kalomo. And one area where we see that we need to strengthen our effort is within the area of economic empowerment. As I said, school fees rise towards the end or towards the year 10, 11, and 12 of any kid's education, and it becomes more and more difficult for parents to keep their children, particularly girls, in school. Also, when they see that, okay, this girl is maybe falling pregnant, they might be tempted to marry her off, knowing that they will not have that pressure to provide her with the economic or the finances to stay in school. So what we try to do is to create economic incentives for these families, so they're able to run a business on the side, earn some additional money. And of course, the challenge is that mostly when you invest in an economic enterprise at household level, it takes some time for the returns to really show up so you're able to pay for the school fees. So what we want to do, we want to look into how we can match this project with some other programs we're running on economic empowerment and village banking, save and loans groups. Maybe a village bank system could develop an education fund for young children within their community, so that the parents here is actually seeing education for the children as an investment, and it's an investment that is worth actually taking a loan, knowing that they have the economic incentives to be able to repay that loan later on. We also see the need for more theological reflections on girls' rights, particularly within those schools are run by religious institutions. We see that some of them clearly have a way to go when it comes to accepting the girl's re-entry after falling pregnant, outside of marriage, and so on. That is something we believe that we carry the language and the necessary theological reflection to be able to work on these. And also we need some higher level advocacy towards some of these religious institutions. I said we've run this in Kalomo, which is one district in southern province of Zambia, and we're also looking at other areas where the prevalence of child marriages and teenage pregnancies are quite high, and we see that there's several other opportunities to both duplicate and upscale this project. Going back to Universe, she finished off her quote by saying that after being encouraged through the project, I decided to come back to school so that I can help myself and my child in the future. Some of the biggest challenges that we face as girls are poverty and peer pressure. It's good that this project also helps our parents to do business so that they can keep us in school. We talked to some other key stakeholders, and the representative from the district educational board, he said, I believe this intervention came at the right time. This project has changed attitudes at household level and also influenced other schools, not in the project, to do something about girls' rights and education in their communities, with many of them offering to volunteer their time and energy. Talking to the village headman Muyuni, he said, I'm happy that this project is in my area because it had helped to keep girls in school, especially those who fell pregnant. This is good because in the past these girls would get married off, especially that most of the parents do not have enough money to keep them in school. Finally, we talked to a father, Peter Miyoba. He said, after being trained by Favesa on the value of educating the girl child and not just marrying them off, I decided to bring my daughter back to school. This project gave me financial support, but also reminded me that educating a child is something to be supported by the whole family and even community. So it's that kind of attitude we're looking for here, where they actually see children's education as an investment opportunity that should not be hidden away. That was the end of my presentation. Thank you. I'll hand back to Maybe. I guess you're opening up for a Q&A session.
Yes, Natalia, that was the presentation by Harold. I must add that I was privileged to have been part of a joint monitoring team that went to see the project after it had been implemented. In fact, Harold gave you the figures of 35 people that have gone to school. It was interesting to actually find that the demand for people to go to school was significantly higher than the 35. Only that a number of them could not afford to pay the school fees. And we realized that probably focusing more on the economic empowerment side, or probably having factored in a bursary of some sort in the intervention, could have gotten us more results in a very short term as compared to what we got. So we realized that maybe going forward, there would be need to think through how you encourage those that want to go back to school, how you support those that want to go back to school but they do not have a means. So it was really very interesting when we went in the field, and I think one of the things that comes out from this intervention, in my view, is the commencement of this drive, the coalition within the village to start addressing a problem. In fact, speaking to some of the community action group members, one of the things that came out was that they are now receiving phone calls from nearby villages to actually intervene in cases that are gender-based violence related, and some of them not even very closely related to education, as it were. So that shows you the kind of grounding that this intervention has had within the villages and the communities. And for us, I think that becomes a very positive thing, because we've started this momentum that would obviously in the long term help us address this very big challenge that we are currently facing in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Harold. Thank you very much, Mabin. That was a very interesting presentation. And now we would like to move to Q&A session, and we have the first question from Mitsuki. Please, Mitsuki.
Okay, so thank you so much for your presentation. It's really amazing, and I learned a lot. So my question is about the aspect of working with government. So do you have any strategy to influence the government? Or do you have any plan to conduct a policy intervention in collaboration with the local government? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. I'll allow my project coordinator, Wenya, who is more in charge of this project, to answer it, because I think she'll be able to do it more precisely than I am.
Hello, everybody. I think working with the government, I think the project has already done so, and I think from the beginning, I think the government was already involved through the district and the education, provincial education officers, and even the selection of the area actually was done by the government themselves, on which areas had the most biggest problem, as we decided to pilot the So at community level, at district, provincial level, they're very much aware and involved. But I think, as you heard from the presentation, we need more engagement at maybe higher levels, which is maybe national level. But as Harold already mentioned, I think we have enough laws that can support education of our children in our country. But the issue that we need to focus on is the implementation aspect of these laws, so that people are able to claim these rights that are in these laws that are there. So in terms of working with the government, I think the project is already working government. But added to that is the implementing partner, which is FAWEZA, is actually already has an MOU working with the system, and they're already part of the various stakeholder meetings at national level and committees where these lessons are being shared, and the possibility of replicating these ideas in other schools that are not on the project are quite high. So in terms of involving the the government and engaging them, I think the project already had that designed within it, and it's already yielding positive results because it has been accepted, and it's an idea that they are willing to replicate. I think in Harold's presentation, he talked about the district board secretary who was instructed schools in his district to use the concept other schools so that they already start retaining the girls that have dropped out of school, but also prevent those that have not yet to avoid being pregnant at all, and report cases of child marriages to the relevant authorities.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful. Also, I have a question from Claire. Claire, we would like to give you the opportunity to ask the question in person. Now I will unmute you, and you can ask your question. Please, Claire. Okay, Claire is experiencing some technical problems, so I will read the question. Luckily, she posted the question in the chat box. Does the project work with boys and families of boys in the community regarding their roles in teenage pregnancies and the treatment of girls who do become pregnant?
Thank you for the question. I think it's important to know that, when we're dealing with issues of teenage pregnancies, even child marriages, there's always a male involved. So definitely, maybe we keep talking about girls and girls and girls and girls. The project actually has involved boys quite extensively. There are boys within the schools, the boys in the communities. As Harold already mentioned, the innovation within an innovation, which is a Safe Club, actually it's a space providing sexual reproductive health information to the learners within the school, and the boys are actually part of it and conducting outreach activities within the communities. They're doing outreach activities within the schools using available spaces, as the project already alluded to, that we are using available spaces to reach out to many people. But also when we look at the community action group, the community action group consists of 10 members, and these are 5 women and 5 men. And the men, their role is also to engage the young men within the communities and provide them the psychosocial counseling, provide them more information on how they can also avoid have information on sexual reproductive health and avoid making the girls pregnant, or teenagers marrying each other, because that's also another case. There are, of course, big people making these young girls pregnant, also young boys making the girls pregnant. And at the end of it all, it's the girl who drops out, and the boys continue with their education. So the project already is involving male counterparts as a way of addressing the issue of teenage pregnancies and child marriages.
Thank you very much. Also, I have a question of my own that I would like to ask. Thank you very much again for your presentation. That was very interesting. And my question is following. Well, since your project has so much to do with changing social norms and behaviors, which is a difficult task and thing to do in a short time, what were the main major challenges that you faced while implementing this project? Thank you.
Some of the major challenges that we experienced were actually the distances to the different places, because the schools in the communities, they are saying, well, yes, the community action groups could walk long distances, but the major challenge was to reach the school and to quickly respond. So in our thinking through on scaling up, we're thinking that maybe we should have some innovation that will improve communication. For example, the use of the phones or WhatsApp groups to ensure that the community action groups can easily link up and communicate. We also had some challenges within some faith-based schools, where, as Harold said earlier on, yes, they have a commitment, yes, to returning the girls to school, but they're saying, well, we don't want these bad eggs, because that will influence the other girls. So the level of engagement is that they are prepared to offer a transfer to another school. So we still have to engage those schools, and that's where the faith reflections become a key.
But in addition to that, I think area where the pilot was being conducted is one area that has very strong cultural beliefs, and it's not easy to change social norms like in the shortest period of time. So I think the idea of using the idea of using the various stakeholders, reaching out to the different people in the communities was such a good idea. But of course, we still, experience issues of resistance maybe there. But in terms of changing social norms process, and I think winning the people to beginning to start changing their mind and appreciating that there's value in keeping the girls in school much longer is just the beginning. And I know we need to keep up this momentum so that we continue changing the mindset and say, okay, I think we have won the battle in this particular area and the areas that we may intend to take the project.
Let me also add that, of course, what major challenge here is the time. And as I said, social norms requires time. That's one thing. So although we had some great results over 3 to 4 months now, I still expect kind of the main results to lie ahead of us. Maybe we've been able to capture kind of the low-hanging fruit so far, but there's need for time here. The other thing is that also for the economic incentives and economic empowerment to pay off, the parents actually have money to support the children. That takes also time. At least knowing that most of these parents, they are farmers that need to plant and harvest and so on, and that's seasonal. So it will take time for them to have a return on their investment. So that is the time.
Thank you very much. So far we don't have other questions, and the webinar was very interesting. Once again, I would like to thank you for your time, and I would like to thank all our participants for